Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Bennington. I'm Chuck Bennington, and I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to, but I do know that I love my son, and I want him to have a better, faster, smoother journey through the trials and tribulations of life than I had myself. So here's my documented journey, stories, lessons, and experiences that are really for you, buddy. I love you. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, can we go watch?
All right.
Hey, buddy.
Here we are with a family edition of the Conversations with Chuck podcast. We have Chuck with a special cameo of Liam, and our special guest today, his lovely wife, Vanessa. Better half.
Hi. Yes. I don't know about his better half.
She is most certainly my better half.
I don't know. I spend enough
Always
time
has
with Chuck
been,
in the
always
week.
will
Yeah.
be.
I'm sorry. Say it again, Lisa.
I spend enough time, chatting to Chuck through the week. So, this is a good highlight today. So to have you on,
Okay.
I know he's been super keen for that. So because we've got you on today, I thought it was a great chance to sort of hear a little bit about your story, because I know your name has come up in the podcast, but how, a little bit of your life story just
Sure.
to touch on, and then maybe talk through the evolution of what you've seen of Chuck grow into his various roles in life.
Okay. So yeah, So where do I start? I mean, I was born in 1979. I grew up in Louisiana. I guess everybody's kind of fairly familiar with that, but it's the southern part of the United States, and so as far as like our relationship and kind of my background, I grew up not into sports at all. I was not. My parents just weren't athletes, and that was not a common, like, just wasn't normal for them to play sports, and fitness wasn't really a priority. So, but I for some reason I always wanted to be involved in something physical, and I think that could have been a good or bad thing depending on how you think about it. But when I was in around 8th or ninth grade, I developed an eating disorder because I was very conscious of how I looked, and my body image wasn't the best. And I am hyper visual, and I think that because my outside didn't match like the idea of what I thought was attractive. I mean, to put it bluntly, I developed like anorexia and then bulimia, and I managed to somehow get myself on the cheerleading team in high school. And so that was really my only outlet for like athletics. But over the years, I developed an interest in working out. I got to a place where my eating disorder wasn't completely out of control, but I know I was working out and discovered CrossFit in 2008.
Yeah.
So I had a friend, a guy that came in to see me as an injector. So I do medical aesthetics, and that's the year I started. And so this guy came in, he was a doctor, and he was like, started talking about fitness for some reason. And he was like, you should try CrossFit. And I had actually seen, I was familiar with it. I had seen Jody Bambridge on Muscle and Fitness Hers message board.
Well, there you go.
Myself, I am about 100 million years old.
That's all right. We already went through me finding CrossFit through Testosterone Nation.
Right. Yeah. And of course, we all went on those boards too. Yeah. So I was familiar with it, but I remember watching, oh gosh, who is it? The OGs doing, oh my God.
Nasty Girls.
Nasty Girls.
Yes. Saw that video.
Same story as me,
Yes.
even though like we hadn't even met at that point.
And I remember watching that video being like,
what?
Right? Like,
yeah. It's insane.
Beasts. And like I was so like, oh, I want to be that, but that's too hard for me. I can't do that. I'm not, And then 2 years later, somebody was like, you should really try it. So I did. And in my history, I had done a couple fitness shows, and I had done that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was very it was very kind of bodybuilder split kind of stuff, but I never, didn't look like I didn't look how I thought I should, considering how much work and effort I was putting in, time. So anyway, I got introduced to CrossFit, and then I got on the message board and saw this handsome fella on there, and we started messaging back and forth. And I'm the one that initiated it. because for some reason I have balls when it comes to that kind of stuff. Not mother is
we
my.
we usually do. We usually do. It's
Oh my
it's
god,
always the way.
he's cute.
Yeah.
Oh, see what happened. No.
Vanessa has, through the course of our relationship and our life together, Vanessa has more often than not been the one that is the impetus for like action or a big shift in, some piece of
Yeah,
our life.
I am a strange, like, I don't know, person in that, like, I really agonize over decisions. And I haven't boiled it down to if it's like certain parts of my life where I really agonize over decisions. But once I make one, I know I'm like, doing it.
That's it.
End of
Yep,
story.
we're
We're doing
going.
it. Like, right. So I don't know. I, for some reason, felt he was just he is a good guy. And I could
Yeah,
see that. Like,
good.
he was younger than me and like I didn't know a whole lot about him. I knew he seemed like a genuinely good person and he was smart and he could write. And that's something for me that's like a non-negotiable, right? Like,
Yep.
and very attractive. Is somebody that's like, that can speak and just somebody
Think.
smart and think. Yeah, think. And then actually like make those, make it come out of their mouth in a way that everybody can understand it. And so he was,
She got a good laugh. She liked it.
he was really, yes. We built this boat this morning, by the way. This is my
That's
first
awesome boat.
This
major.
is the first
I have
Lego
never put
project
together
Vanessa's
a Lego
ever
project
done.
before. This is my first.
That's a life goal ticked right there. I don't know that I've ever done a Lego project. So yeah.
It wasn't too
And
bad.
the dinosaurs. Good job, buddy.
Yeah.
Here.
All right,
Smile.
Bubba.
So
You're
anyway,
watching
I
stuff
just
over there.
really, I saw a good person and
Mm.
he happened to be cute and he happened to work out and he had a cute pit bull. And I was like,
Tick.
send it. Yeah. let's
Yeah.
see what happens?
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it, that you can get I know Chuck and I have talked on some of his earlier podcasts. Like, I've never met you guys, in person. You're thousands and thousands of kilometers away, yet, I can see through, how much family means to you guys and how much joy you get from, each other and family just from, what you can see and read and the values that you just subconsciously even put out there at times. So it's sometimes you can get to know people better, like virtually, I guess, than sitting next to them sometimes.
Yeah, and I think Chuck's probably mentioned this, and I know it's certainly true. We've talked about it. Is that because we didn't meet in real life, we were
Mm.
forced to like really talk and get to know each other before we met in person, and so that because I think especially now, like people tend to like with all the like, especially with the apps now, just like the hookup apps, and like skip straight to like the good part or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you don't really like it's like all of a sudden you're like in a relationship with somebody you barely really know, right?
Yeah.
You have a
Yeah.
physical
It's
relationship, but do you actually know that person? And like
yeah.
I knew a whole lot about him, of course. I know,
Mm.
it wasn't I didn't know everything I needed to know or should know, but I knew more than I think probably anybody I'd ever actually gone on a real date with
Yeah.
prior to that
Yeah,
relationship.
Skip
I
that
knew more about
superficial
yeah.
small talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I didn't know much about any of the superficial, like
We had a
small
lot of like
stuff.
deep conversations about a lot of
Yeah.
more like controversial, more difficult, abstract conversations because at some point over the course of 4 months of just a long distance
Mm.
relationship, like, man, talking about the weather, especially when you live in Texas and Florida, like there has to be substance. But as I listen to you guys talk about it, I think something that's interesting that maybe I hadn't appreciated as much before is that we both wanted the same like destination. We both wanted like the same vacation. We hadn't figured out the
Yep.
flight plan or the route, but for the first time
Yep.
in either of our lives, it didn't seem like we were crazy to want the life that we wanted, to like have the identities that we aspired to, because
Yep.
really, I guess
You
prior
sort
to
of
that, there was so many people that looking back now were just like very fixed mindset, very close-minded, not
Mm.
just in like the typical social sense of closed-minded, not that, but also just
Mm.
their mind was closed to possibility. Their mind was closed to like belief and change. If you had an idea, they'd be the quickest to tell you like why it wouldn't work. And like she just nurtured
Yeah.
my dreams in a way that nobody ever had. And like, I don't know, believed in me before I believed in myself. And it was easy to imagine a life together. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
And
Do
yeah,
you
and that
Too
was
much.
mutual.
do you think that it's easier to be able to have those conversations, in writing or, with that distance of phone rather than you're meeting somebody for tacos for the first time. You're like, so tell me about your life dreams.
Yeah,
It kind of feels safer, doesn't it, to have that little arm's length to go to
it
think
does.
about your replies.
It does. Yes, I think it depends. Like, I think maybe some people would be more comfortable in real life, but for me, I've always been
Mm.
better when I can write something out and
Yep.
think about it a little bit. And I'm more in that form. I am more authentic, right?
Hmm.
Like in
Yeah.
real life, sometimes I tend to like kind of try to, I read into body language or I read into like how
Mm.
I'm feeling. Like, too much. I get a little too anxious, a little too nervous, and so sometimes I fill in gaps too much with things that I think the other person wants to hear. And so, but if I can write it out, like I don't feel those things so much. And so it
Mm.
affects like what I'm actually saying. And I can really like be more authentic. So yeah, in
Yeah.
writing, I am more myself. And
Yeah.
so
And when you're not seeing the other person's little tiny little body language and facial things, where
yeah,
you're halfway through saying something, you go, oh, they think I'm
like,
an idiot.
ooh,
Hold
that
on a
seems,
minute.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's
Too
funny,
far.
mastermind does
You
that. You don't
you
even
just
realize you're doing it.
like you said at the start, it's like, well, just send it. Just
Just
oh
send
well,
it. Yeah.
just
Like,
send it.
and it's funny how you can get a feeling about someone, right?
Mm.
Even when you're not in the same room with them. Like you said, like sometimes you
Yeah.
get to know people in that way
Mm.
better than you can in real life because we're not putting on a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Maybe that was more the case back then, but yeah, I
I
don't know.
think that yeah, as I'm listening to you guys talk, and maybe like this is helpful for Liam in the future. I think that if you look at more challenging conversations as a skill, would it make more sense that you would be better at that skill when there's like less emotional impact and when you can measure your responses and when you can delete and edit and think and
Mm.
Yeah,
rethink and like go through there several times and build several like stories and context in your head and be like, all right,
Mm.
well, it's just you have to be better at having hard, challenging
Mm.
conversations to have them in the moment where there is an immediate response time, where there is a ton of variables to negotiate.
yeah,
Well, I mean, we've all said those things to somebody and then gone, oh no, that's not how I meant it to come out, or
you're like,
you've just changed feet in your mouth and you're like, no, it sounded way better in my head. Whereas if you'd had time to process the full context and
yeah,
thoughts, you go, okay, this is what I meant to say, or this is what I feel, and yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So you and Chuck have had lived pretty much a lot of life adventures that couples live. Like you've done business together,
Started.
fitness together, parenting together. Like building houses, moving many times from what I
What we've
gather.
done the most is move, I think.
Moving many
Yeah,
times, not building houses many times.
Only like,
yeah, yeah,
Yet,
yeah,
maybe in
yeah.
the future.
yeah,
But it's all those sort of things can either make or break. Chuck was talking about when you were pregnant with Liam and how there was the hurricane and it was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We've got to, and you just go, okay, let's, a lot of people that would be a big divisive thing. We're going, we've got this stability here with our business,
yeah,
with the gym, and this is where we thought our future was. Now we're just gonna do what? And
yeah,
the fact that you guys can, and I know it's an overused term at the moment, pivot, quite quickly go, okay, no, this doesn't suit our life anymore. This is what we're doing for our little tribe, even though, it was
yeah.
kind of on the way.
We were pivoting before it was cool. So yeah,
I mean, I think something that's always helped us, and it's a really interesting, timely podcast episode, and like in a lot of things in our own lives, and like in a very big
yeah,
universal sense. But I think something that's helped us with the decision making process of what might seem like bigger, braver dreams is it's very easy to have the belief structure in place that like, well, what you're doing presently you can always go back to because you know that like you can do whatever it is that you're doing. So like if it's reasonably comfortable and the pain's not too great, like you can always chance it because like you could always go and get
Mm.
the same position replicated in a lateral move. Like you could always build another business to the same level that your skill set is. Like it's
Yeah.
But
this is
a lot
conceptualized.
of people don't see it that way. I don't think. I remember that was the advice you gave me when I was closing the affiliate. You're like, you can always open another gym. Like it's
Well,
not
and like
means
what a
that you
great
can never do that.
it might be, right? Like, what if you could do it all over again, knowing what you
Mm.
know now with no trauma, no baggage, like
Yeah.
nobody from the decision making process, just build the magic wand dream from minute number one.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
right.
when that's like when that becomes the worst case scenario, you're like, yeah, you know what? Actually, even if this other thing went terribly, coming right back here with a clean
Wow.
slate, with all the lessons learned,
Yep.
that might actually not be that bad of a thing. And if I'm supposed to end up there, like, okay.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, but I guess for you, Vanessa, is through all those sort of evolutions and I guess developing and evolving dreams as you go and what you think your life is going to look like and what you both want out of life. How have you seen Chuck sort of grow into those various roles from the cute dude on the message boards who liked a bit of fitness?
Yeah. And so I think, when I first met him, and he was, I mean, have you gone through all of this? He was like repairing and rappelling off the side of
Mm.
buildings, right? Like
Yeah.
cleaning, repairing windows, that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I saw a lot of potential in him. And then I feel in a way like I knew he was capable of some more. It was I didn't even consider like what he was not capable of. It was never a question of like, can he do this? It was like, why haven't you already done this? Or like, you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like I guess like it literally did not occur to me that he wasn't going to be something more than what he already was. And I loved him like so much that wasn't like, I think a lot of, and this is probably why a lot of relationships fail, is people like, they kind of size up, their potential life partner in terms of like how much, how good a provider is he? Like, will he be? Well, like, is he a lawyer? Is he a doctor? Does he have a degree? Is his family got money? Yada, yada, yada. And I've just never been able to like lead in that way. I can't. When I try to, I can't. I try to make logical decisions, and when I do, it's terrible. And so, like, I hate it. And I'm like, this is not what I thought it would be, and I cannot do it. So and in romantic relationships, I really haven't had that many, but the ones that I've had, I mean, really, all of them up to them, they just weren't right. And
Yeah.
so I knew he was right. And then I've seen him develop from like the person he was into the person that he could be. And so it started with like coaching, and he was amazing. And right from the get go, everybody really was like, he just has a way of connecting with people and making people feel special. And I knew that already. He made me feel special. Oh, it's so stinky. Thank you, Brad. And so, and it was just a natural process. He went from coach to like, coaching for the gymnastics team or the gymnastics course. And and the whole time I just saw him, like I said, like it wasn't even like I had to like watch you grow much. I mean, you did, but it was like I already knew it was there. So I was like, yeah, of course he's doing great. I mean, everybody loves him, and it's something. Like I remember one of the first times I saw him actually coach an entire course. I was like, Jesus, like wow, like it's impressive. When you see somebody that's just doing like the thing that like they're meant to do to like help
Yeah.
people. And I don't want to say coach gymnastics because like that's so
No.
limiting. It's not coaching
That's
gymnastics.
that's just a vehicle.
Yeah, that's just a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's touching people's lives and making them feel like they're capable of doing more because they are. That's
Yep.
what he did for me. I was really his first student. I think like it was like, it was like he was like so supportive, and he made me think that I could do things that I never would have considered. Like I was I have in my core, I am like a dreamer and like an artist and like a very free spirit, but I was raised and an environment in which I was like, my mom encouraged that, but not really as like a livelihood, right? It's like you need a
Yeah.
job. And because
Yeah.
it like financial security was always a problem, like I was like, ooh, I gotta have I like that's a big story for me. That's a big fear. It's like loss of like financial security because I did have that.
Mm.
And so I played it very by the rules, and I was like, well, I need a job. I will always have a way to make money, and I do have that. I went into nursing.
Yeah.
And even though I got my first degree in exercise science because that's what I loved, and then I went back and I got a second bachelor's in nursing and then a master's in nursing. And I thought, this is just it's secure and that's what I should be doing. And
Mm.
he was the first person to make me think like, why don't you like go to business or do something more? And I was like, oh, that's for people that are I don't know what better, smarter, have more money, have more
It's
something than
so
me. Yeah.
interesting to hear you say it because I remember the first time we had that conversation. I was on my phone in like my side yard. We were talking in the evening, and I like it was the same conversation that I was just having previously. Like, hey, well, why did you go into nursing? She's like, well, because there's always going to be a job. I was like, right. So you can do whatever you want because like you've
Yeah.
got the perfect backup, like the thing that you
Yeah.
intended is the safety net that's always there no matter what. So like you accomplish that goal, and that goal never dissipates in any value. Like at any point in your
Mm.
life, you'll always be able to, in short order, go into like a better employee
Mm.
position than most people.
Right. So
And I
it was a tangent, but yeah, I mean, over the years, I've just seen
no, I
him,
think that was a good thing
yeah,
because
refine.
it's interesting listening to both of you talk that you saw more in Chuck than what maybe he saw and what he could do, and he's done exactly the same for you in that way. It's like you're
Right.
like I need this and I'm not, I need to be responsible in these things, and Chuck's like, well, you can do anything, and you've kind of done that for each other, like sitting external to that and looking at that. That's you've virtually just said the same story about each other, which is very cool.
Well,
Mhm.
like the hero's journey is the same for everybody in some foundational sense. Like the hero meets a guide who gives them a plan and calls them to action and like
Mm.
moves them through belief over a bridge of trust. So like it's
Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
were each other's
Yeah.
like I think first kind of more mentor relationship. And I
Yeah.
hadn't like ever thought about it intentionally that way, but like that was a lot of what it was
And
challenging
possibly
questions and belief
in
and
the
like yeah.
in the safest space possible as well, in the confines of this is my person.
Mhm.
So if he or she is telling me something, then there's nothing behind it, no hidden agendas. It's just for
Yeah.
my growth and my for our growth.
Right. And I think for both of us, it was like, well, sounds this like it just gave me a confidence I didn't have before. I was like, is somebody this smart and this like,
Mm.
caring and this cute, thinks that I'm capable and attractive and believes in me, then well, maybe I don't know, maybe they're not lying because that's
Yeah.
always you're like, oh, they're just blowing smoke, like they
Yeah.
don't really think that they're just saying that to be nice. And I still struggle
Yeah.
with that a little bit, but yeah, yeah, it
And
was
that's
really
the
cool.
stories from, both of you have had, clearly past relationships and past experiences have built up a data bank of stories in your head about who you are and what you're worth. And then you meet this other person who's the antithesis of all of that. And you're like, you can choose to either believe it, or a lot of people just don't. They just go, oh, that can't be true because I've been told this, and this my entire life. And every other relationship has shown me. So they move away from that, whereas you guys leaned into that, which is, a phenomenal strength as well.
It was yeah, it was a really interesting, like and it still is, but that was, like, a really, like yeah, it was a really magical time, to be we were really, like, that, like, caught up in the
Mm.
whirlwind, like a whirlwind
Yeah.
romance. It was, like, really and still is, like, I feel like we very much so have, like, a storybook, but the longer you go, the
Mm.
more you realize, like, the storybook romance is, like it has struggles, it has, like, ups and
Mm.
downs and, challenges, but that's, like, what makes it cool and interesting, and
Yeah.
it's, like, at the end of your life, you're like, Jesus, we did a lot.
Yeah.
We did a
and
lot.
and it's I've been in relationships where you don't argue and you don't fight and you don't. It's
Yeah.
just You
Yeah.
just there's no
Yeah, it's all right.
common purposes. There's none of that. It just, and you think, oh, it'd be great never to have any conflict, but then you realize conflict is where the growth
Growth
is if it's
Yeah,
you know
right.
if there's
healthy and
no
meaningful.
struggle, there's no
Yeah.
Yeah, and
struggle,
it's
there's no story. Like there's
Yeah.
and like
yeah, it's
how could you not talk like with the person that you spend all day every day with? How could you not have challenging conversations? How could you not disagree about things and like actually work to find ways to resolve it, you know?
yeah, it's and because you're choosing, you know that above all else, it doesn't matter what the particular conflict is. That's your person, and nothing's going to shatter that. So you're like, well, we're just going to find a way through it because there's no there's no
So
other option. This is what's happening. Um, Vanessa, did you grow up with siblings or a bigger family or smaller family?
I have a nice, like normal average. I have a brother, so I have one sibling.
Yep.
So I guess like
Okay. Yep. Cool.
we're a little on the smaller side, but not, I guess pretty typical.
Yeah, that's
Um,
okay.
and he's about 4 years younger than me. So
Nice. So,
yeah.
you've grown up with siblings. Chuck was, essentially an only child
hmm
and, had very different, I guess, role modeling with his background with his stepfather and, biological father and so on and so forth. How have you seen Chuck's evolution into being, a dad
Oh gosh.
and growing into that role? Because I
Uh,
know that we spoke on an episode where we did about this, where he was like initially thought that's not something I'm capable of doing.
Oh, yeah. We talked about like, if we don't I guess we never ruled it out. We for sure never ruled it out. Never.
Mm,
But it was one of those things because I'm older, I'm like 5 years older than him. And so it's one of those things that was like I knew because I was like, I'm getting older and if we can't have
yeah.
babies, then that would be okay. We had talked about it. We weren't gonna make it like a big ordeal if it didn't happen.
Mm,
But the fact that like I'm so glad we did. He is
yep.
he is an excellent father. He really is.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Liam, I don't and thank God he will never know what it's like to not have a dad
Mm,
that interested and doesn't love him or care for him. I mean, like he Chuck takes every opportunity to like make sure that he plays with him and does all of the little things, that like
mm,
sometimes I think you see like, people at the playground or whatever, and they're, out and they just
mm,
like they kind of watch their kids, which is fine. But he like Chuck is so involved, right?
yep.
And then two,
Engaged.
he is a very intentionally like he intentionally parents, and I think we both do. It's just very much so we talk about it all the time. It's like, are we doing the right thing? Like,
Mm,
do we need to change this, that, or the other? How are we, how are we gonna deal with this issue? And so
yep.
yeah, I can't imagine like having a husband that was any other way. My dad was very
Mm,
excited to be a dad, and he was very involved and very
Your
happy
dad
about
loves
it.
being a
Yeah.
dad.
And
That's been
so
very,
he
very cool for
does.
me to see.
Yeah. So I think that probably subconsciously part of me, was attracted to like I saw a similar like something in Chuck that was I know
mm,
I did. I remember the very first day that I messaged him and I sent a message to my dad. What did I say? I was like, I knew that there was something special about him,
mm.
and I think my dad had sent me like a saint, like the "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Who's the guy that sang it? The Hawaiian guy.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I know the
Yeah,
one yep.
he's died now. But
Mm.
yeah, my dad had sent me that clip, and Chuck sent me the same thing within like a day or two.
Whoa.
Later. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And I
right,
was
yeah.
like, "Oh, that's interesting, right?" And then
Yeah.
I did something to my dad about it, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I have a feeling about this guy. I wish I knew exactly
Mm,
what I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like that because I just knew I was like, this guy's he's special. He reminded me of my dad. My dad's very, he's just very he cares, and
mm,
and my mom has always said that he was so excited about having a family, and he wanted to have
mm.
kids. And my
Yep.
dad, my dad's dad was around and he wasn't
Mm,
absent. But both sides of our family have, alcohol abuse, substance abuse issues, and so his
Mm,
dad drank a lot. I think when he was younger. By the time I was a kid, he wasn't doing that, and he was at home. Everything was okay.
mm,
But he grew up, and he didn't have a lot of money, and uh, I think he had to be a grown up before he really
mm.
should have, and
Yep,
so I think there was a part of him that wanted to create a different experience for his kids, and he was
mm,
really excited to do that, and he did. I
yep,
had a wonderful childhood in a lot of ways. In that way, I never didn't feel loved. I never had to
yep,
worry if my dad left me.
yep.
And so Chuck has been, that and then so much more, so intentional and so thoughtful and so like, just he's just a really amazing father.
So, because my next question would have been, is that something that, given Chuck's experiences, that it surprised you that they came out and so easily within him to just be so present with Liam and so engaged with Liam, and he's like I said, I've only seen him engaging with Liam on the socials or on our podcast where he makes an appearance, but
Yeah.
it's you can tell it's not like he's just going through the motions. It's he's in that moment, like, you know, with him
Yeah.
and with you when you guys are doing stuff as a trio.
Yeah, no, I didn't ever wonder, and I don't know, maybe I should have, but I didn't.
I think she got to see me coach enough,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
that that's very much so how I try to intentionally parent and intentionally father is like really can I help guide you towards like a better future and like be truly helpful? And I think she got to see me do that with hundreds and hundreds of people for years and years and
Yeah.
years. It's like, well,
Mm,
I know that he cares very much so about other people, so this is a pretty easy one
yeah.
to care a whole lot about.
Yeah, I mean, I just there was no indication that he wouldn't be attentive or be happy or be, excited about having a child
Mm,
and yeah, so and he didn't let me down. So
yeah. Oh, definitely not. He's,
uh,
out of lots of people that I know and I've seen, he's probably one of the most um fun, I guess, and engaged dads that, I've seen when he's, doing that, he's present and has the ability to switch off emails, social media, whatever, and just to be, doing that adventure. So that's been very cool to see. But it's just interesting how Chuck has been able to, and I'm speaking about you like you're not here, Chuck, but you are,
That's okay.
um, have been able to, get past the role modeling that you had, to then be completely a 360 version of that. And my original intent on the call with that we're going to cover, but we'll talk about it on Friday, Chuck, is about, whether you consciously or subconsciously are undoing those stories to make Liam's path a little better than the path that you
No,
had.
it's
And
very
conscious.
intentional.
Yeah.
yeah,
Very, very intentional.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like
And that,
that's the nature of the entire like podcast as a whole. It's like, what are all the things that for, most of my life I wish that I knew some piece of
mm,
my dad's like thoughts, wisdom, guidance, experience. Just, like that
mm,
I think that that's a very archetypical piece of like the human experience in some kind of way is just like those loops of a paternal influence that were just left so open that in being really intentional it's like coaching development, right? Like so if
mm,
you recognize that everybody in your gym was bad at snatching, you'd be like, well, I guess I need to improve my ability to help people snatch. I need to
mm,
figure it out, like in whatever capacity or context. And so that was it. It was like, what are all the things that I've got like some unfinished business, some open loops, some lack of
mm,
closure, or just like, hey, what are all the things that we're missing for a very long time in a knowing way? That if I
mm,
have the ability to fill in the gaps, if I have the ability to fill in the blanks, or at least give, here's a couple multiple choice answers that work for like these frameworks, belief systems,
mm,
ideas, or at least like this is if nothing else, not to give advice, but like this is what I've suffered through, and like this is how it came to be, and this is why I made the decisions I did, and this is what happened.
mm. It's interesting that a lot of people tend to fall back on the, when they struggle to, you know, lead a different path to how they grew up, they're always very, well, I wasn't shown a better way. Well, you're a perfect example of, well, no one showed me the way, but I just figured it out and was intentional about, developing that.
And maybe that's like a very cool framework to mentally process, is like that's what I'm trying to do for Liam, is not show him the way, but show him how to find a way.
Mm,
Like, how
yeah.
can you actually work to approach relationships in a life where you can cultivate a better way forward, even if it is the most, traditional, stereotypical, Western, white, middle class, like, life that he ever ends up having. Like, you
Mm,
can have much, much better and much, much worse experiences of the same exact objective set of circumstances.
yeah. But a lot of people tend to just be defined by their circumstances, not either use that as a lever that they can pull to go forward.
A very long conversation about this last night,
Yeah.
Oh,
actually.
there you
It's
go.
yeah, and I don't know.
Universe.
Yeah. So
Doing
that,
universe
like,
things.
it's like basically I think like fixed mind state versus like, a
Mm,
more like
Growth.
growth, orient
mm,
mind state. And I think you can change those things, like for sure. But I think there are probably families that nurture that kind of like,
mm,
mindset more. And then I
For
think
sure.
there are people that are just more, they're more and more able to imagine a
mm.
different and better way,
Yep.
and like
Sorry, I just thought of something.
my parents, it's very interesting because they were very, in a way, they're very fixed, right? In a way, they're very fixed, like with my
Mm,
mom with her health. It's just,
mm,
"Oh, this is just the way it is," and like, my
mm,
back is broken, spinal.
My back is broken. Final.
No,
mm,
and like there's
mm,
that, but then they were always like, "You can do anything you wanna do. You can be
mm.
anything you wanna be, and like, you're so smart, you're so capable," and so I got that message from myself, which maybe in hindsight is kinda sad that they didn't think that was possible for them, but they thought it was possible for me.
Well, we
But
also talked
so
about that last night, that like you're
It's often easier though
yeah,
to
yeah,
push it out onto somebody else than
yeah,
to accept it for yourself.
yeah.
Like, it's easier for us to believe in others more than we might believe in ourselves.
Right. And and because it does, like it's hard work. And I think like, telling someone else that they are capable kind of absolves you of your like the,
Yeah.
having to do the work to make the changes. But
Yes.
yeah, for me it was like something that I was so unhappy, uh,
Mm,
with, which is, a good or bad. I was so unhappy with what my life was or who I thought I was that
mm,
I was like, I will, something will change. I can accept
mm,
nothing else. Like and that was like, it started with my body. I remember having a conversation with my mom. I went in, we were buying back to school clothes and we were in the Gap and I wish I still had this t-shirt. This t-shirt with sun on it. It was cool. But anyway, I was trying to buy jeans and I was trying on sizes and I was like, I don't want to buy those. I don't want to buy that size. And because I will just whatever. I was gonna do something. I never dieted or anything in my life. But my mom was like, you just wait till you're my size. And I was like, and
oh,
this could be ugly, but like I was just like, no, no.
mm,
I won't. I'm not going to like it is not an inevitability. I can do something about this. And
mm,
take for good or bad, I did develop, that's kind of where my
mm,
dieting thing and I went off the rails with it and got way too skinny and unhealthy. That's kind of like that was one of the ways that kind of I started seeing like absolutely not. I am in control of my life, and that's the way I
mm,
took control. I took control of my body because that's what I could
mm.
control at the time. My food. And then there was another instance, and like, golly, there's a lot of stuff coming out right now.
See, how cool is this for a monkey?
My mom, and my mom sounds like a bad person. She's really not.
Not at all.
She's
Yeah.
not. But she challenged me. She actually made me grow in a whole lot of ways because she
Mm,
challenged me, and I was like, nope.
yep.
Um, in middle school, like I said, I somehow managed to be a cheerleader. Well, I never take gymnastics. I never take dance. I just jumped on my trampoline and played with my brother and my cousins who are boys. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I I was like, I'm gonna try out for cheerleading. And
Mm.
I practiced my butt off and I made the team. And later on, and I was a cheerleader all the way from middle school through high school. And later on, she was like, I did not think that you were going to make the team. I didn't
Mm.
that you would. But I did, and that was like, again, that was part of it. That and the eating were all within the same like year or two, right?
Yep.
At that I was probably 11, 12, maybe 13. And that was part of like, at that point in time, I realized that like I was in control of what happened to me. Those,
Mm.
small things like getting on the cheerleading team and changing my food and losing weight. Like I was like, all of a sudden I was like, you can change, you have the
Yep.
power and
You can
ability.
do anything.
Right, like to do, and
Yep.
I heard that from my parents in a lot of ways too, but that was the
Mm.
first time I think I had like taken
Experienced it.
control of something and
Mm.
done something about it. So I don't know. I
Do
don't
you
know.
find, interestingly, that if, for you, Vanessa, are you the sort of person that if someone says, "No, you can't do that," you're like, "Oh, hell yes, I can, and I will."
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't get that a whole lot anymore, but yeah, maybe somebody does need to tell me that.
Uh,
Yeah.
that was a big piece of, I think, kind of what bonded us like earlier on is we both found a lot of motivation from probably in some
Proving
ways
people
like not the
wrong.
healthiest place, but it
Yeah.
was
Mm.
it was effective. But
Yeah.
you need heaven to
Mm.
reach for and hell to escape
Escape.
from.
You
You
really need
need,
hell to escape
Yeah.
from,
you need
unfortunately. Yeah.
pain to like
Mm.
crystallize discontent to make a change. And
Mm.
it can go too far, and that's where you end up, really disordered. And me with like drugs and alcohol, her with an eating disorder, like the mechanisms of doing a thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, because yeah, that was kind of how it was a negative like catalyst that, made me change. And same, I guess, for you. Uh, but as you get older, you find those negative catalysts that, yes, they get you moving, and they've certainly worked for us. And I think it works for a lot of people. I think you do have to be so uncomfortable that you can't stay in the current
Mm.
situation. Like it's too uncomfortable to be there anymore. So you have to change. But then as you get older, you find you're like, well, I'm not really like that uncomfortable anymore, right? Like I'm like,
Yeah.
nothing hurts that much. So then you have to kind of reinvent how where your motivation comes from. And and the thing is, you find that negative stuff that you're running from, it follows you.
Mm. Yep.
But it becomes its own
There.
like limitation.
Yeah, because you're
Yes.
keep putting yourself in the same situations over and over and over again, and you're like, here's ugh, this stupid situation I don't want to be in, and here I am again. Why does this keep happening? And so
Yep.
then you're like, okay, so I have to find something different.
Mm.
I can't keep doing this over and over again. And that's
Yep.
really where I am in my life. I've finally come to the point where the negative catalyst, it's not working. I can't keep running from that. I've got to find a different way to be motivated about something. So yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
it's, and I
It
think some kids are probably lucky enough to grow up in households where they're like, I don't really have a negative catalyst, and good for
mm.
them. They don't
Yep.
have to like, okay, he disagrees.
Well,
I mean, I think there really are, because like I want to
yep.
think that we're doing a good job.
Daddy did not say the F word. Daddy said, Daddy made a noise.
But
I think personally, and this is part of like the podcast as well, is to evolve thoughts and thinking over time. I believe that is the reason that the constructs of heaven and hell exist in all religions, is that you need both,
yeah,
because inevitably you
Mm.
will always reach some point where like, I am no longer in the amount of pain that drove me to the present that I have created, but to make the future, I have to reconceptualize pain. Like, okay,
Mm.
in this season of life, it's existential. It's
Yep.
like, man, we got a nice house. Like we eat well, we feel good. Like life is
Mm.
objectively very, very well. So the suffering is only that which we create that is subjective. And so I believe that like you need the positive and negative influence, because you can have the
Mm.
worst objectively, but if you're miserable, then
Yeah.
You're
like
miserable.
you have to have a way to understand it. And so I guess that like that would be my thought is you have to have some of the negative influence in order to have the ability to have the awareness of it. Otherwise, like you're just suffering. You're like, I don't know why I feel bad all the time. That's probably most people that just
Yeah.
eh,
Just sit in a hole.
flounder.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you need both. But it would be better if we more often were encouraged in the positive. That it wasn't so necessary to crystallize discontent and pain and frustration, anger, and all the negative emotions. But I
It's a good
think those
hat.
are the things that are necessary because most people are lacking the belief. Because if you
Yep.
really did believe, then you would just go for it. Like if you knew that your online course would sell 1 million units at $1 million in 1,000 days, like you would be so motivated and like bulletproof in bringing that to life.
Yeah.
But
Because
like
you would
I
know.
think that's why we need the pain and the discontent to crystallize us past our own beliefs because it's like when we had, exploration on a global scale, when they were sailing across the Atlantic Ocean,
Mm.
man, there is big elements of like, what is it that you believe, but also like, how painful is this present situation of, in that case,
Mm.
like not knowing.
Yeah.
Like to be driven mad by the idea of like, we don't know what happens when we just go west. We have no
Yeah.
idea. And like, I will never be able to die happy not having that resolve. So like, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a very different pain because like, whatever. Yeah, I'm rambling.
No, it makes sense. I think it's just an evolution as we grow and we age and we learn how we apply some of that stuff to understanding ourselves better and what drives us and what intrinsically pushes us forward. But then adding in a family dynamic where you've got, partners and kids, and it's like, okay, how do we move as one unit through this now, not just, you know, individual beings, and how does that fit within the family?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that was part of the catalyst for moving here is that, when you have a child, that certainly changes your priorities. It's like we can't live in the gym anymore. We were at the time, but like,
Yeah.
it was
You
just,
have to move forward. You cannot move
yeah,
backwards.
yeah. And like
Yeah.
you start to set harder boundaries, which is super helpful, I think. I think that if
Mm.
when you have a little person to like consider and it's not you because
Mm.
we'll treat our crap like we'll treat ourselves like crap. It was like somebody said last night they had a life coach that told them I treat my neighbor like myself, or I love my neighbor like myself, so I killed him.
Yeah. Love thy
So
neighbor like thyself, so
yeah,
I killed
killed
him.
Yeah.
him, right?
And you're
Like,
like,
because we will be so brutally, like, just
Mm.
horrible to ourselves. Like, we won't give
Mm.
ourselves the things that we would, consider absolutely essential for a kid. But for us, we're like,
Mm.
I'm okay. I don't need that. I don't,
Mm.
I don't actually, I don't need the pay raise. I don't need you to pay me well. I don't need you to treat me well. But then as soon as you
Mm.
have a child, you're like, this is a hard, absolute, non-negotiable. This has
Mm.
to happen, or I can't work for you. I can't work with you. I can't do this, that,
Mm.
or the other. And so that was, I want to be closer to my parents. So we moved here, and Chuck was like, it wasn't even a thing. It was just like, yeah, okay.
I
Like
mean,
we'll sort it out,
we'd already moved.
Yeah. And
We had already moved twice in Fort Worth, and then down to
and then
Houston,
to
and then
Florida
to
and all
Florida,
over.
and we'd
Yeah.
moved probably like 4 or 5 times within
Yeah.
Florida. We'd been through multiple jobs, multiple roles and
And
positions.
something I didn't think about is we had Mister. We had his pit bull. And like if anybody has a pit bull, like you can't just live anywhere. They
No.
won't live a lot of places. And so we had already made a lot of concessions. We lived in really weird places because of
That was
Mister.
it.
And that
Like,
was
that was a non-negotiable.
it was
Like,
like,
it's
well,
the
that's okay.
Yeah.
family over everything.
We never considered getting rid of him. That was like never even
Mm.
discussed. It was just like, well, okay, we just can't live there. Then we have to live somewhere else. And
Yep.
so that was a lot of the reasons that we moved so much, really, was Mister. And so
Mm.
we had Liam, I guess, like, of course, like, I mean, we moved for Mister. So of course we would like move for Liam, and we would
Mm.
do whatever we needed to make sure that we were providing for him. And so I moved here and I had a good job opportunity. I got it while I was pregnant. And so came here, and it was yeah, like, I mean, ever since, I think we talk a lot. We always have, and we continue to do that. And so every decision is a decision that we talk about, like, as a family, like, how does that impact him, me, Liam,
Mm,
all of us? I and that's kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't know any other way, right? Like, that's the only way
mm,
I gotta be. I wouldn't consider anything else. So, but
yeah.
and it
And
works.
that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's what works. And, a lot of people will go through life where they're in a relationship or have a family, but they're still very self-orientated. It's like, well, everyone needs to just get on board and come along with me. And particularly, you see it a lot with in the elite performance fields of sport and stuff, like everyone's just kind of got to go with that, or military, I guess. But, you
Yeah,
know,
military.
even in general life, some people are still very self-centric, and it's like, oh, they find it very hard to adjust to not being able to do what they want when they want, how they want, when it's like, oh yeah, but we've got, X, Y, and Z to do. So
Yeah.
it's a really powerful tool that you guys grasped early on. And, maybe Mister was your teacher for a lot of that stuff to prepare you for
There
a
is
cyclonic
there is a lot
4-year-old.
of truth in that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. I think some people, because we both make money, we both like, we're both contributing. I think like I could see, whereas if I was not working, where I'd be like, well, I mean, if we need to move for your job, we move for your job. Like, right? Like
Mm.
it would be
Yeah.
more that way. But at the same time, like, you've heard the like cliche things. It's not 50-50, it's like 100%, 100%. Like you don't give
Mm.
50-50 in a relationship. You give
Yeah.
your everything to that relationship, and that continues. Like, that's true. Like, you can't just be like, "Oh, well, I'm doing this and you're doing
Mm.
this." And, like, let's make it a like, keep scores and, like, make sure everybody's contributing equally. I mean, to
Mm.
a degree, we are always in keeping each other in check a little bit, but not to the point where I'm like, we've ever made
Yeah.
any decisions based off of, like, right? Like, I don't think so. Have we, do
It's
we?
interesting that, you bring it
Yeah.
up because I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it while I was taking a poop this morning.
Oh,
Actually, I was drinking my coffee
so
and I
am
was
I.
reading The Greatest Salesman on Earth. And it's funny because I was thinking that, like, we've never not found compromise and middle ground. In
Mm.
the entire course of our relationship, there's never been a single instance that I could think of that one of us has had to settle for what the other one wanted and like their set of desires, because I think from the very beginning, not only was the conversation so open and engaged with like looking forward,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
if we can't get the other person who's more on our team than anybody else in the whole planet, like if we can't get them on board with an idea, like, well, okay, maybe it's not a good idea, or maybe you don't
Mm.
understand the idea, or maybe it really is just kind of like a selfish dick move. But
Mm.
as far as I know, like there hasn't been a single thing that I can think of where one of us has ever just like conceded defeat, so to speak. Like
Mm.
really
Just giving
anything.
in.
Just,
Yeah.
like furniture, dinners,
And
like vacations, like parent interactions. I think that
mm.
not that it's
Yeah.
been easy, not that it's been simple, but like
No.
I think that as far as I can really wrap my head around, we have yet to ever not be able to find the emotional and logical compromise where like it
And
feels good and it's the right decision.
And I think that's, I'm just sitting here thinking, project forward 10 years, 20 years with Liam, like the conversations that you guys are able to have with yourselves, and to come to those decisions together, and knowing how reflective you both can be is, the power of the conversations you will have with him when he's old enough to process those. And I mean, you have, quite, you know, you know, in-depth conversations at his level with him now, and he understands probably a lot more than your average kid, or even though he might not be aware of it. But down the track is like, I was just thinking about if, 20 years time we put Liam on the podcast, like, because that's what we'll be doing clearly. And
Really.
I'm sure his reflection is, "Oh, yeah, my mum and dad talked all the time, and we, as a family, made decisions together, and we talked all the time." And as Liam becomes older, it'll be, "Well, how does this affect you, Liam, as well?" Rather than just, "How does it affect us as the responsible adults?" And that's an amazing gift.
Well, and we think about like it's a little bit of a mind F.
Mm,
The idea that like he will never know how good he has it and had it until he's on the other side of it. And that doesn't mean that there's not a million other things that we could do 1,000,000% better.
yeah.
But he's not going to realize that a lot of this I do recognize is atypical. A lot of
Mm,
like our life, our lifestyle, our conversations, our views, our mindsets, our social circle, like having a podcast isn't a
mm,
very normal thing, you know.
yeah.
Living in the house that we live in, like it isn't
Yeah.
normal. You know, we're in a good place, but it's all he knows.
Yeah.
He
But
won't
I
know
think
like, that's weird to have, like not weird, but like, man, oh, you didn't have a rock wall? You didn't
yeah.
have like a Nerf rag gun wall? You didn't have like your own little library? Like,
But I think as he starts to evolve, and like you said in your own childhood, like the friends that you had at that time is like, oh, you come from broken home too? Cool. That's what we do. Like you just understood each other and you became aware of what other kids had and didn't have. So as he gets older and has more consciousness around that, I think he will realize, and he will, I guess, through the values that you guys are portraying, is that he will automatically be grateful for and recognize what he has versus just taking it for granted. I don't think he's going to be, yeah, that's just how things are. I think he
yeah,
will
and like,
profoundly understand that.
and maybe like
Well, I
that's,
hope
you know,
so.
an interesting, like, you know, as a real world example of like kind of coalescing a few of these things, this Lego boat that he wanted to show you, he bought yesterday with his
Mm,
own money that he raised from not just doing work, but like
mm,
this time it was kind of a continuation of the lesson of like understanding
Value.
value. And
mhm,
so he did paintings and he sold paintings to me and Vanessa and her parents and my parents and
yeah,
can make more money at a
yeah,
faster rate doing that. But also you're responsible for, you know, creating what needs to be created to get the thing that you want. And
mm,
so yeah, I hope he doesn't take it for granted. We do really talk very consistently and regularly about like gratitude and abundance and like
mm,
but also that like you're responsible for solving your problems and like figuring your stuff out. But you can always ask for help and there's just
Yeah, and
mm,
giving him the opportunity to like, yeah, like you said, he know that he's considered and his opinion, his little
mm,
person is important to us, and it's not all about mom and dad.
mm,
And maybe almost to a fault sometimes. I know sometimes he's like, "It's always your decision. You are always the boss." And I'm like, "Well, A, that's not true, and B, mommy and daddy do have to like we have to make sure you're
mm,
safe, and things are
yeah.
do like go to
There
bed."
has to be some balance in there.
Apart
Yeah,
4:00 in the morning, yeah, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But at the same time, like that was not something that I got to do. And to
mm,
this day, I struggle with like being assertive and saying what I want.
mm,
I don't want him to he certainly does not have that problem. I don't want him to have that problem.
yeah,
Because as you get older, you discover it's like if you don't ask for what you want, nobody's gonna give it to you. Nobody's gonna like
mm.
doing such a good job. Here's
here's the world on a
here's
silver
this.
Here's the
platter.
world. Yeah,
You're
and
so good
that,
at what you do. Here's
Well, and like
this.
it's
That's rare,
really so
right?
thinking about
yeah,
like
very.
talked about difficult conversations. I think when you're an adult, asking for what you want is a difficult conversation. But if you
Mm,
put off the skill development and the awareness for too long, then you have to learn to swim in the deep end. You have to
yeah,
learn how to snatch in the competitors
Mhm.
class. You're like, well,
Well,
I didn't learn how to ask when I was, you
I
know,
have
a
to look like a
teenager with my
moron in
parents
front of
about
all
very basic things, but now I have to ask people with
yeah,
real ability to shift my life in a real direction about very big
Yeah.
decisions and very big consequences and
Yeah.
like man I didn't know how to
Right.
ask
So like Chuck
and
and
now I've got to
I
figure it out like at a firing squad so to
right.
speak.
Yeah, Chuck and I have had to learn how to snatch in front of like
mm,
business world Rich Froning and freaking Tia. We're like,
yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just gonna figure it out. Everybody's gonna watch me flounder. And I don't want that for him. And I don't think that
mm.
he'll have that issue. It's like, yeah, he's
I,
giving
And you see, like, how many people are even in relationships and they're unhappy because they're unfulfilled, but they've never asked for what they want. And the other person is completely clueless because they've never asked them what they wanted or considered
that.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just that constant, gap, which means no one's going to progress any further, but everyone's feeling a bit shitty about the situation.
Well,
Yeah.
and so like, yeah, the individual suffers as well as the group.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
something that, like, we've been aware of is like, how do we both move one another forward, but also move us together forward? And how can we make decisions that are in alignment with, like, there is very much so a huge piece of life that you can have your cake and eat it too. Like,
Yep.
two truths can coexist. You can solve multiple problems with one solution. Like, there are better ways if you're willing to do the work and figure it out, if you're willing to ask for what you want, if you're willing to ask for help. Like, that's what we've tried to do kind of through all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good note to put a bow on this particular episode. Is that
I wanted to share one thing with you because you'd asked like what some of the earlier messages were, and I think this is a cool thing that we probably don't revisit as often as we should, but it's Chuck and Nessa, a love story by us, and what it was.
It's just all of our.
When I oh, I will cry so much.
It's like all
Can
of
you
our
read that?
a simple phrase, a simple 5 words that really began our lifetime together. These last 6 months have been the best of my life. Thank you for being everything I could ever want or need. I love you, baby, always and forever. And so in 2008, November, and that's kind of when we had started talking a few months earlier. And I had, I guess, messaged him at 10:49 p.m. I said, I know I like you a lot. I know I like you a lot. And Chuck said, I know I like you. And then, I mean, we started talking in August. So it's 4 months later, and we finally were like, okay, I like you.
I kind of like you.
I like you.
And so that was really kind of like a lot of what escalated the relationship since. And so then, like, starting later that night, like, I kind of documented all of our Gmail chats, the pictures that we sent back and forth, and just, I don't know,
very cool.
Our life, like our origin story.
Yeah, and that's going to be very cool for Liam to have, down the track and in years to come, and that's just very cool. And I feel privileged to have a seat at your table to hear these stories and to see you guys even from a distance. So I think you're doing good things together and as a team, and Liam's an awesome little dude. So I think we'll have plenty more of these chats, which is a very good thing.
Well, thank you. Thank you as
you.
always. It means more to me than you'll ever know.
No, these are awesome. All right, we will talk on the next one. See you, Liam, buddy. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another conversation with Chuck Bennington. Hope it was enjoyable for you. Hope there was some value and some benefit in it. Maybe even had a laugh or two. Even though these are primarily for me and Liam, we sure love to help a friend in need, because it's a friend indeed. So if there was some piece of it that was good, please feel free to share it with somebody else and pay it forward. If you think what we're doing is rad and you want to support it, please just like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Appreciate you, dudes.